you live the life you chose, or the life that was expected of you? Take a deep breath and think about that for a moment. It sounds like a simple question, but it can turn your entire world upside down. How many times have you woken up feeling like you're just playing a role, following a script someone else wrote, one that has nothing to do with who you really are? Have you ever found yourself smiling at parties, surrounded by people, yet feeling an unexplainable emptiness inside? Have you ever looked in the mirror and asked, why am I like this? Why do I react this way? I don't even understand myself. Or worse, have you ever felt like there's something wrong with you just because you can't seem to fit in where everyone else does? Maybe the problem isn't you. Maybe the problem is the mold. Yes, maybe you've been trying to be someone you never were, forcing yourself to fit into a shape someone else defined, trying to please, to adapt, to stay quiet. But what if the real question isn't who you're supposed to become, but who you already are deep down, but haven't had the courage to admit yet? There's a truth that lives inside you. It doesn't scream, but it never disappears. It whispers when you're tired, on those days when nothing feels right, in the moments when you feel like you're suffocating. That truth is your essence. And what we're going to do here today is face that essence head on. Together, we're going to dive into one of the most powerful and liberating theories in psychology. A theory that wasn't made to label you, but to set you free. A theory that can genuinely change the way you understand yourself, the way you relate to others, and the way you live. We're talking about the 4 functions of the soul, as described by Carl Jung, a Swiss psychiatrist and one of the most influential figures in 20th century psychology. Jung believed that within every person lies a unique, living psychic structure, something that goes far beyond what you do and gets to why you do it. It's not about behavior, it's about essence. According to him, our soul is shaped by 4 major functions. 4 ways of perceiving the world, reacting to it, feeling it, and making decisions. And here's the key. When you discover which of these functions dominates your way of being, everything starts to make sense. Your patterns, your conflicts, your gifts, even your pain. It's like finding a map, a guide into your own inner world. But let me be honest, this dive might feel uncomfortable because it takes courage. Courage to take off the masks. Courage to stop pretending everything is fine when it's not. Courage to look in the mirror and finally say, this is me, and that's okay. It won't be easy, but it will be real. If you stick with me through this video, I promise, you'll walk away changed, not better, not more put together, but more you. And maybe for the first time in a long time, that will finally feel like enough. What are Jung's 4 functions? When Carl Jung began studying the human soul, he noticed something that maybe you've also sensed deep down, that every person sees the world in a different way, not just in terms of opinion, but in how they interpret, react to, and feel everything around them. To Jung, this wasn't random. It was structured. He believed the human psyche is guided by 4 major functions, true inner compasses that determine how we perceive reality and make decisions. These 4 functions are thinking, feeling, sensation, intuition. These aren't skills. They're fundamental ways of being. Each one represents a specific way of relating to the world, how you understand things, how you feel what happens, how you experience the present moment, or how you sense what hasn't even happened yet. And here comes one of the most important ideas of this theory. We all have these 4 functions, but in every person, one of them is dominant. In other words, it leads your way of existing. It defines how you see life, how you make decisions, what motivates you, what drains you, what attracts you, and even what you tend to avoid. The opposite of your dominant function, known as the inferior function, usually stays hidden in the unconscious. It's there, but it acts silently in the shadows, and sometimes it shows up in an uncontrolled way, sabotaging your choices, creating internal conflicts or manifesting as exhaustion, anxiety, impulsiveness, anger, or emotional numbness. For example, you might be someone highly rational, but who explodes emotionally in situations that demand calm, or someone very sensitive, but who struggles to think clearly when making big decisions. And the explanation may lie exactly there, in that inferior function you haven't learned how to integrate. In addition, Jung identified that these functions combine with two main attitudes: introversion and extroversion. So a person might be a thinking introvert, a feeling extrovert, a sensing introvert, and so on. These combinations form what Jung called psychological types, personality profiles that he described with remarkable precision. And you know what's most fascinating? These types aren't labels, they're mirrors. They don't limit you, they explain you. Discovering your dominant function isn't about putting yourself in a box. It's about stepping out of the box others tried to force you into. It's about letting go of the belief that something is wrong with the way you think, feel, or exist. Because when you understand your function, you understand yourself. You begin to see why some tasks drain you, while others energize you. Why certain conversations deplete you, while others make you light up. Why you keep making choices that seem right, but leave you emptier every time. The truth is, you may have been fighting against your own nature without realizing it. And when that happens, everything feels heavy. Everything exhausts you. Everything hurts. But when you begin to live in alignment with who you really are, the world doesn't change. You do. Let's begin. 1. The thinker. The mind as a guide. If your dominant function is thinking, then what guides your steps isn't emotion or impulse, but logic, clarity, reason, coherence. You see the world as a system that must be understood before it can be lived. Your mind searches for patterns, structures, and explanations. You analyze before you act. You weigh pros and cons. You consider consequences. Your natural instinct isn't to feel, it's to understand. And while many people act on impulse, you ask, what's the reason behind this? Since childhood, you may have been seen as mature, rational, even cold. You take pride in keeping your head on straight, even when those around you are emotionally overwhelmed. You know that many times clarity saves. But here's the challenge. Over time, you may have learned to use logic as a shield against what you can't control, against other people's emotions, and especially against your own. Have you ever tried to translate a deep feeling into a logical explanation, as if that would ease the pain? Have you ever tried to reason with someone who just wanted to be heard? Have you ever held back tears while telling yourself, there's no reason to cry, this is irrational? That's the thinker's dilemma. Logic gives you control, but it doesn't give you peace. And when life slips out of your equations, when emotions invade the realm of reason, you feel threatened. It's like losing the ground beneath your feet, like trying to speak a foreign language, one your soul was never taught to read. On the outside, you may seem calm, but inside, the conflict is constant. Because the more you try to understand what you're feeling, the further you drift from actually feeling it. The truth is, the thinker runs the risk of becoming an exile from their own heart, and that comes at a cost. You may build functional relationships, but they feel empty. You may make the right decisions, but they don't make you happy. You may achieve success and still feel like something is missing, something that can't be measured by logic or numbers. And here's what's even harder to accept. You may begin to dismiss other people's emotional worlds, labeling their feelings as drama, overreaction, or irrationality, when in reality those are legitimate expressions of the soul. Here's a truth that might be hard to hear, but Jung saw it clearly. Reason is not the enemy of emotion, but it's not superior to it either. For the thinker, the great journey isn't about expanding your logic. It's about deepening your inner listening. It's about stepping down from the tower of the mind and walking the path of the heart. That doesn't mean abandoning your logic, it means complementing it. Because life, no matter how neatly we try to organize it, is made of paradoxes, and not everything that matters can be explained. So start slowly. Instead of trying to understand what you feel, simply feel it. Instead of analyzing the emotions of those you love, simply be present. Instead of searching for arguments, offer comfort. It's not easy, I know, but it's necessary, because in the end, being a thinker isn't about living from the neck up. It's about learning to use your mind as a guide, not a prison. It's about recognizing that there's wisdom in silence, in touch, in tears, in spontaneous laughter. And that wisdom belongs to you too. You just need to remember how to access it. Carl Jung said that the path of individuation is the path of integration. And for the thinker, that means looking with courage at the things that can't be measured, but that still transform you. You don't have to choose between logic and emotion. You can and should walk with both. Because when the mind learns to listen to the heart, thinking is no longer just a guide, it becomes a bridge to the soul. 2. The feeler, living through the heart. If your dominant function is feeling, then you carry a kind of invisible radar. While others analyze, calculate, and measure, you feel. You pick up on what isn't said. You sense someone's emotional state just by the energy in the room. You walk into a space, and before anyone speaks, you already know. You feel the tension, you feel the joy, you feel the silence, and often you feel even what the person themselves is trying to hide. Your world is emotional. It's built on connection, inner meaning, and deep emotional exchange. You don't just live with your eyes, you live with your chest, but there's a cost. Being a feeler is a gift, but it's also a burden, because when you feel everything, it's easy to carry too much. It's easy to absorb pain that isn't yours. It's easy to believe that every distance is rejection, that every silence is indifference. It's easy to lose yourself in excessive empathy and forget to take care of yourself. Have you ever felt like you were too much for the world? Have you cried in secret because someone didn't realize how much something hurt you? Have you ever felt fragile for caring so deeply, even when no one else seemed to care at all? If so, you're not alone. You are a feeler, and your soul was made to feel. But here's the challenge. Feeling everything is not the same as carrying everything, and not every emotion needs to be turned into action. You need to learn how to set emotional boundaries, not to become cold, but to avoid destroying yourself trying to keep others warm. The feeler must understand that not every pain is theirs to solve, that sometimes someone is distant not because they're rejecting you, but because they're at war with themselves. And that someone's silence can say a lot, but it doesn't always say what you fear. You also need to know that your sensitivity is not weakness. In fact, it is your greatest strength. In a world that numbs itself to avoid feeling, you still feel. In a world that isolates, you still connect. In a world that trivializes relationships, you still love deeply. But for that love to be healthy, for you and for others, emotional maturity is essential. It's necessary to recognize that the heart is a powerful guide, but it cannot walk alone. That's why one of the greatest lessons for the feeler is this: thinking a little more can save your heart from great storms. Because when emotion allies with reason, wisdom is born. And you don't need to harden yourself to live in this world, you just need to find balance. To know where the other ends, and where you begin. To know when to care, and when to step back. To know that empathy is not fusion, it's presence. It's compassion with discernment, it's loving without erasing yourself. Carl Jung believed that individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, requires this movement of integration. For the feeler, it means welcoming logic without betraying the heart. It means pausing to reflect before giving yourself away. It means remembering that in order to offer warmth to the world, you must first keep your own fire burning. So if you identified with this profile, know this: you are not too sensitive. You just live in a world that, more often than not, is not sensitive enough. Keep feeling, keep loving, but learn to care for yourself with the same tenderness you give to others, because only then will the feeler stop getting hurt so often and finally begin to bloom in balance. 3. The sensor, here and now. If your dominant function is sensation, you live life as it is, not as it could be. You are grounded in the present. Your feet touch the soil of reality with certainty, and your eyes focus on what is here now, right in front of you. You don't get lost in theories or abstractions. You trust your five senses, what you can see, touch, smell, hear, and taste. For you, truth has a shape, a color, a weight, a smell, a texture. You're the kind of person who notices the details others overlook. The scent of freshly brewed coffee, the temperature of the breeze, the feel of wood under your hands. You are practical, concrete, direct. While others drown in possibilities and assumptions, you speak with clarity. What do we have now? What can we do? Your presence brings relief in times of chaos. You solve, you build, you deliver, you turn ideas into tangible things. You don't live in the world of intentions, you live in the world of actions. But every strength holds a vulnerability, and the sensor runs the risk of clinging only to what can be proven, and in doing so, ignoring everything that can't be measured. The soul, for example, intuition, a deep desire that arises without a logical reason. The imagination that points to a path that doesn't exist yet. The subtle signs that life sends, and that don't fit into the visible world. Have you ever dismissed an idea because it felt too far-fetched? Avoided an emotional conversation because it seemed unproductive? Abandoned an old dream simply because it didn't fit into your goal spreadsheet? This is the blind spot of the sensor. When you anchor yourself too tightly to reality, you risk forgetting what's essential. You can fall into autopilot, living one day after another, solving problems, completing tasks, but drifting away from what moves you on the inside. You might become efficient, but empty, functioning like a clock, but without direction, because not everything that's true can be touched. Not everything that matters can be explained. Not every calling of the soul comes with concrete proof. Sometimes what we most need to hear doesn't come from outside, it comes from within. But to hear it, you need to quiet the world's noise and make space for the invisible. Jung said that the process of maturing isn't about abandoning who we are, it's about integrating what's missing. For the sensor, that means making space for the abstract, the symbolic, the spiritual. It means recognizing that there are truths you can't prove with evidence, but that are confirmed by the heart. It means looking at a dream and saying, maybe this doesn't make sense right now, but it's still worth trying. You don't need to abandon your practicality. On the contrary, it's a gift, but it doesn't have to stand alone. It can walk side by side with sensitivity, imagination, and deep listening. You can still be the one who builds, but you can also learn to dream about what's worth building, because life is not made of concrete alone. It's made of intentions, memories, invisible meanings that weave together who we are. So if you're a sensor, know this: you have a tremendous power to make things happen, but you also have the challenge of listening to what has no shape. Not everything that matters is in the present moment, and not everything that's real can be explained. Sometimes the truest life is the one you feel inside, even when the outside world doesn't understand it yet. 4. The intuitive, what the eyes can't see. If your dominant function is intuition, then you live in a place most people don't even know exists, an invisible yet very real place. A realm made of possibilities, mental images, subtle connections, and signals that can't be explained, but that you feel clearly. You don't need evidence to notice something. You pick it up. You intuit. You sense the vibe of a situation without anyone saying a word. It's as if you can see through words, expressions, and gestures. While many are stuck in what is, you're imagining what could be. While others see an object, you see a symbol. Where there is chaos, you sense hidden meaning. Where there is routine, you see space for reinvention. Your mind lives in the realm of what if. What if we did it differently? What if this is just the beginning of something bigger? What if this has a purpose I haven't figured out yet? You are naturally creative, a visionary at your core. You get ideas in flashes, and sometimes you don't even know where they come from. But they come, and they carry power. Sometimes too much power, because here lies your challenge. The world of ideas can be so fascinating that you forget to live in the real one. Have you ever started a project with overwhelming enthusiasm, only to abandon it before finishing? Had 1,000 brilliant ideas but struggled to put even one into action? Felt frustrated because your mind races ahead of the world, and no one seems able to keep up? That's the paradox of the intuitive. Your soul lives in the heights, but your body still walks the earth. You see far, but you stumble over the present. You think big, but sometimes get lost in the small tasks of daily life. You feel like you're meant for something great, but grow frustrated with the slow gears of the world. And if you're not careful, this can turn into anxiety, impatience, or even disconnection. You might become that person who seems distracted with their head in the clouds. Or someone who's always starting something new but never feels fulfilled with what they already have. Carl Jung believed that true growth happens when we integrate the opposite of our dominant nature. For the intuitive, this means learning to ground your ideas, to give form to the invisible, to make the abstract concrete. It means understanding that even the soul needs solid ground, that the brightest vision in the world only comes to life when it meets action, structure, and presence. And more, reality is not the enemy of imagination. It's the stage where your dreams can take place. If you're willing to walk through it step by step, you don't need to abandon your inner world, you just need to translate it into the outer world. It's not enough to feel that something is possible. You must build the bridges. You must endure the process. You must finish what you started, and most importantly, you must learn to live in the now. Even when the now feels too small for your vast mind. Because as inspiring as it may be to live in the future, it's in the present that life actually happens. So if you've seen yourself in the intuitive type, know this. You have a rare gift. You see what many cannot see. You sense what hasn't yet happened. But your mission isn't just to see the future, it's to bring it into being, and to do that, you'll need time. Routine, patience, you'll need to stop, breathe, and do what needs to be done. Only then will your visions cease to be mere ideas and become realities that transform the world. The shadow side, the inferior function. What we deny in ourselves controls us. That's one of the most powerful and uncomfortable truths Carl Jung ever gave us. He believed that within every psychological type there is not only a dominant function, the one that guides your life, shapes your choices, and expresses your essence, but also an inferior function, a more fragile, primitive side, often unconscious, but always present, operating in the shadows, influencing your emotions, decisions, and behaviors, even when you think you're in control. This inferior function is like a hidden mirror. It reflects what you don't want to see but need to face. For example, the thinker, so rational, avoids the emotional world. But when feelings pile up with no outlet, he explodes. He becomes reactive, impulsive, sometimes even cruel, precisely because he never learned to handle what he feels. The feeler, so emotional and empathetic, tends to reject logic and cold analysis. But this can lead to impulsive decisions based on fleeting emotions, followed by guilt, frustration, or confusion. The censor, so practical and realistic, ignores what can't be seen or touched. But over time, they feel an inexplicable emptiness, a disconnection from the soul, from purpose, from the invisible things that give life meaning. The intuitive, so visionary, lives in ideas and possibilities. But they forget about the body, routine, and rest. And the cost is high: anxiety, chronic fatigue, constant dissatisfaction, even when everything seems to be going well. These examples are not personality flaws, they are signals that you're rejecting an essential part of yourself. And here is a hard truth, but a liberating one. You don't need to eliminate that side of yourself. You don't need to fix your inferior function as if it were a flaw. What you need is to integrate it. Integration doesn't mean becoming someone else. It means accepting that you are more than you've allowed yourself to admit. And when you recognize your inferior function, you begin to make more conscious choices, instead of being driven by impulses you don't understand. The inferior function doesn't disappear, it matures, it transforms little by little when you welcome it with humility and courage. And do you know what happens when you do that? You become more whole, more grounded, more authentic. You discover that you can think and feel, that you can live in the now and dream of the future, that you can be strong and sensitive, that you can be in control and let go. The shadow is not your enemy, it's your mirror, and when you have the courage to face it and bring it into the light, you stop being a fragmented character and become at last a complete human being. You might be asking yourself, okay, but why does this theory actually work? Why would understanding my dominant function make such a difference in my life? The answer is simple, and at the same time profound. Because this theory is about you. It wasn't made to label you. It's not here to fit you into neat little boxes with limiting definitions. On the contrary, it exists to free you from the exhausting effort of being someone you're not. You know that tiredness you feel? Even when you're doing everything right? That feeling of being out of place even when surrounded by good people in situations that should be good? That silent frustration of constantly trying to improve, but still feeling empty, disconnected, lost. This theory shows you that the problem isn't that you're broken. It's that you've been living against your nature. You've been using your energy to mold yourself into a type that isn't yours. You've been forcing thoughts that don't come naturally, trying to act like others, feel like others, choose like others. But deep down, something keeps screaming, this isn't the way. And that's where Jung's theory becomes revolutionary. It invites you to stop fighting yourself. It gives you permission to be who you already are. Because when you discover your dominant function, everything starts to align. You work better because you choose environments and tasks that respect your rhythm, your style, your natural talent. You communicate better because you understand how you process information, and you learn to respect how others process it too. You make better choices in relationships, in paths, in priorities. You accept yourself more, and with that, you stop internally punishing yourself for not being like everyone else. You begin to realize that being different is not a defect. It's a signature, and living in harmony with that signature is what brings peace. Not peace in the sense of passivity, but peace as in alignment. Alignment between what you feel and what you do, between what you think and what you express, between what you desire and what you create. People who live out of alignment with their dominant function are always tired. They live with guilt. They live with anxiety. They live with the feeling that they're always behind, always wrong, always out of place. But when you recognize your function, you also begin to understand your vulnerabilities, and you can treat them with compassion, no longer with guilt. You can strengthen them, integrate them, without forcing yourself to become someone entirely different. The truth is, the greatest transformation doesn't come when you change who you are. It comes when you stop fighting yourself and begin to walk in favor of your essence. And from that moment on, everything starts to work. Not because life becomes perfect, but because you are finally whole within it. Have you ever thought about that? About how much we try to fit in, fix ourselves, improve, as if we were a factory defect, as if our natural way of being were an obstacle that needs to be overcome. Society teaches this constantly. Be more rational, be less emotional, be more practical. Stop dreaming, don't feel so much, don't think too much, do what's right, but right for whom? And in this effort to meet all these expectations, we drift away from ourselves. We start adding layers, we become disconnected, we mold ourselves, shrink ourselves, silence ourselves, until one day we don't recognize ourselves anymore. We're living a life that looks right on paper but feels wrong in the skin. We're surrounded by people yet feel alone. We're producing, delivering, running, but inside we're empty. And it's at this point that Jung's psychology shines like a lantern. It doesn't offer you a label, it gives you a mirror. And in that mirror you don't see who you're supposed to be. You see who you already are. Jung once said that the greatest tragedy is not living wrongly. It's living your whole life trying to be someone you never were, and dying without discovering who you truly are. That phrase cuts deep, but it also heals. Because when you understand your dominant function and recognize your inferior function, you stop forcing yourself to fit where you don't belong. You stop judging yourself for not thinking like others, for not feeling like others, for not acting like others. You realize you don't need to be like anyone else. You only need to be whole. Whole in your logic, whole in your emotion, whole in your silence, whole in your search. Because you are not a mistake to be corrected. You are a map to be decoded. A map of paths, detours, trails, and inner landscapes that only you can explore. And maybe what you need most right now is not ready-made answers, it's permission. Permission to stop trimming yourself down. Permission to observe yourself without judgment. Permission to be honest with yourself. Permission to return home, to the home that exists within you. Remember the quote we heard at the beginning? What you deny submits you. What you accept transforms you. When you accept who you are, something shifts. You stop living as your own enemy and begin to live as the guardian of your own soul. You don't need to be complete. You don't need to be healed. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to start respecting yourself, listening to yourself, being there for yourself. Because in the end, the greatest relief in life isn't being accepted by others, it's accepting yourself fully. And from that moment on, everything changes, not from the outside in, but from the inside out, at the pace of your own process, in the rhythm of your truth. You already have everything you need, you just need to remember who you are. If this video touched something inside you, if at any moment you felt like something truly made sense, then don't keep it just to yourself. Write in the comments, "Now I see who I am." This simple phrase can be the first step in a long journey of reconnection with yourself. And it can also become the lighthouse that lights the way for someone still in the dark, like you once might have been. Share this video with someone who's still trying to find themselves. Someone who's tired, trying to be everything, trying to fit into molds that were never made for them. Maybe that person is just one listen away from being set free.